This is the Dear Warren podcast.
Okay, and we're on. How you doing, Roy?
I'm doing just fine.
Roy is my musical brother. In a band together, make some music, but also at the same time, he has graciously come out this morning to help us out in the inaugural, I guess, alpha beta demo test of the Delta Dear Warren podcast, where from the general description, we're going to see how it goes, a little bit of backseat parenting, a little bit of entertainment, some stories, but mainly due to the fact that I would like to just talk to interesting people that are...
And you didn't have a choice to get any, so you ended up with me?
Yes. And going off the fact that, you know, with a small circle of influence, just people that have influenced me in some way, and hopefully one day will, through me as some type of filter, whatever Roy does, will somehow influence Warren. So...
You're in for trouble then.
I'm in big trouble there. But yeah, I guess a perfect part to start with is probably with, I guess, the relationship with music and everything like that. And we were actually talking last week a bit of just how we got into music. I was actually thrown in because of, you could walk now. Do you want to do baseball? Do you want to do football? No, piano lessons. So I started out, and I think I took like 13 years classical. How about yourself?
You took a lot more lessons than I did.
Oh, yeah?
Really. I started playing at a very, very young age. As a matter of fact, the story goes that supposedly I was, my mother played piano. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it was a grand piano in our house when I was first born. It wasn't our house, it was our apartment because we lived in the Bronx in an apartment building. And I was, at 18 months of age, I was clunking out the melody to Around the World in 80 Days on the piano.
So this was all just from your ear?
Yeah, so they figured,
Nice.
I probably have some ability. So when we moved out to Long Island when I was 6 years old, that's when I started my actual lessons. Uh-huh. And I only had lessons for about 2.5 years because also one of the close friends of our group of my brothers and mine was a guy named Russell Mittermeier, who's ended up becoming the president of Conservation International in Washington, D.C. He discovered a couple of genuses of monkeys.
Wow.
He's let's put it this way. He's got a lot of accolades. But as a matter of fact, on his board, and one of his friends was, what's his face from the Star Wars?
No way.
Han Solo.
Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford, yeah. Because he was a big contributor, too, to the Conservation International.
I think it's interesting how immediately you just jumped straight to Han Solo instead of just saying Harrison Ford. Well, how iconic that is.
I couldn't think of Harrison Ford's name offhand because early in the morning, and I'm only on not even my second cup of coffee. Come on.
That is very true.
But anyhow, what happened as a result of that is I followed him into the Bayshore swamps one day, and they get toads and snakes and turtles, and ended up contracting impetigo. Which is a very very, very highly contagious skin disease. And I think I told you that.
Do I have to be sitting farther away from you right now?
No. Luckily, that. But I have in my DNA. I have from my mom's side of the family. She has eczema, so didn't know it was latent in me. That exacerbated the eczema and. As I told you, you always have to look. It was which pointer finger? It was on my right pointer finger. Slowly I watched as the skin around the pad was eating away.
Oh, jeez.
And then one day it kind of plopped off. So it was like, is my piano playing days over? Mm-hmm. So that's why I stopped having lessons, by the way. So, but long story short, found this great dermatologist who went in his own back room. He had a little laboratory, made these salves, and within 3 weeks, everything came back to normal.
So... I stopped playing piano because I discovered guitar and Metallica, and I was like, screw that, I want to play guitar. You had to stop playing piano because your fingers were falling off.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Well, I loved it so much, my fingers were...
But no, body parts falling off is part of, like, musicianship lore of how much they love playing. Stevie Ray Vaughan, you heard the famous story about his calluses, right? He was playing a club, and... He obviously, when he plays guitar, he plays on like 13 gauge.
Yeah, I heard, like really
strings,
13, 14
like
gauge
piano
strings,
wire,
right? Mm-hmm.
Like really thick strings, and his hands were huge. Anyway, he's playing a gig, and I guess it was like an all-nighter set. He tears the callus off one of his fingers, like it falls off. Goes into the legend has it, he goes into the club manager's room. He goes, well, what happened? His hands are bleeding. And he goes, oh, nothing. Do you have super glue? Super glues the callus back onto his hand. And the club manager's like, dude, you already did a great set. You don't have to like do anything. You don't have to play anymore. And he looks at him and goes, no, man, I got to do this. And just super glues the callus back onto his hand, goes back in and just plays another ripping set.
Have you ever played and had blood coming off while you're playing?
Yes, I have played, but it's not from a callus falling off. It was from bad picking technique on acoustic, and I like tore up my right hand. I guess I was using too small of a pick, or my too early in my guitar playing days, and just like blood was just gushing all over like the side of my acoustic, just because I was tearing the skin off of like.
Did you notice it immediately?
What's that?
Did you notice it immediately?
No.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I remember I was playing. I had a gig in Manhattan for like 4 years. I played at this place called Chelsea Place. It was a really hot club, and so I'm playing one night, and it was a packed house every night. Because even though it was a grand piano, it was amplified grand piano, and it had all other instruments, so bands would play there. The only instrument that wasn't allowed was a drummer, because that was back in the days of cabaret licenses still.
Really?
Yeah. So that was the early.
Drummers weren't allowed?
No, for cabaret, because the sounds of the drums would go through the walls, all throughout the apartment buildings.
Really?
Yeah,
but even like the sounds of other instruments were...
They muffled more. They were allowed. But drum machines were starting to come in just then.
Okay.
Yeah, the one drum machine was the Korg Rhythm 55 at that point. But anyway, so we're playing pop music, right? Playing and banging away. And I'm playing, right? And I'm watching everybody. All of a sudden, I'm starting, why are my hands sticking on the keys?
Oh.
And I looked down, and the whole upper register of my keys were like all red. And people were like looking with their eyes going popping out.
Oh.
Yeah.
And it's very... Oh, the contrast of it too, because obviously keyboard with like, I'm sure some type of like ivory keys.
Oh yeah.
Oh geez, you could even mask it. Oh my God.
Oh, the contrast was really nice, the red and white.
I'm sure it was. So, I guess the lesson for Warren then when he grows up is to play until you bleed and keep going, right?
Yeah, no. Maybe the lesson is no. You have to beat him so he's used to bleeding, and don't worry about it. That's all. and that's how you build character, right? It's one sort of character at least. He'll be an axe murderer, but that's beside the point.
That is besides the point. You see, this is why I bring you on, Roy, to kind of influence Warren directly with these lessons. But coming back to it, as far as with music, as you saw, you kind of you voluntarily went into music as opposed to your parents forcing you into it in a way.
Yeah. I wasn't forced into it at all. I mean, my sisters sang, and my mother played piano. My father supposedly sang, but he was working at that point, and he would sing occasionally. Although it was interesting because my father was very much dabbling in the early electronics, so we had besides the early tape recorders, he had the early record machines that actually made records. And so he would make records of my sister and my mother playing, my sister singing, my mother playing, or him singing and my mother playing.
Really?
Yeah.
This was all analog too, right?
Oh, analog. You're talking lacquer, lacquer disc that you put a heavy tone arm on, and as you say, as the microphone picked it up, it would actually etch the grooves onto the lacquer.
Wow.
I have them downstairs in the studio. When next time you come, I'll show you, because they're falling apart now because the lacquer's all coming apart.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, going into that, you voluntarily wanted to. About what age did you want to start playing?
Well, wanting to start, I was playing all along. I got the chance to play the lessons. I stopped at 8.5. I went back when I was about 9.5. And I did that maybe another year, and then I was enjoying doing the school systems, all the music and that instead.
Yeah, I think that's around the same age that I was put into it. You know why though? When my dad came to the States, he was also with his best friend Sam, and Sam had two daughters that oh my God, one of them, by the time they graduated, one of them was in Princeton, one of them went to Williams, I believe, one of them's a pediatrician, and the other one's an astrophysicist
Wow.
now. One of them, I think, got a perfect score in the SATs or something really, really close. But anyway, my dad saw like that the daughters were doing very well, and both of them were learning from the local piano teacher in Nutley. Her name was Mrs. Stark, and so I believe that's probably one of the reasons why they put them in there to kind of just follow along that same line of success, as opposed to actual like musical
And after the
ability.
13 years, your dad said, "Why didn't it work for you?"
Oh, nice, Roy. Thanks a lot. Jeez. I would come back too, but obviously right now I'm just drinking water, and it's too early in the morning. I hooked you up with the secret sauce already with some coffee.
Good coffee.
But yeah, when going into it, I think it's interesting, as you said, that with going voluntarily into music in a way that you wanted to play, that was more so like I just wanted to play my video games and everything.
Well, when's the first time you started with a band?
With the band, I would say sometime after I had like almost a year of guitar under my belt.
How old were you then?
Probably around 16, I would say. I started guitar late. Because I didn't even really know of... At that age, on the radio and everything, I was listening to, what is it, like Z100? I was listening to like
Did you
pop
have an
music.
amplifier when you had your guitar, or did you just have
Yes.
the guitar alone?
When we first got the guitar, we went to a Sam Ash, I think, or something like that, and the salesman was wanting to push like a guitar on us, and he just needed to somehow do the sale some way. And usually what they try to do, and this is probably a sales tactic I bet they all do. Oh yeah, you start out with acoustic, you can take it anywhere with yourself, and But what eventually has to happen for a kid when they have an acoustic guitar? You eventually got to get an electric guitar.
yeah, of course.
But I was such a Metallica fan at the time. I was like, no, I want an electric. And so then the guy I noticed he immediately switched his tone. He goes, "Oh yeah, an electric is fine. The strings are lighter. You can start playing sooner on it." So he like really was looking to at least sell it. And he knew at that point this is easy. I can make him get the guitar and the amp at the same time. And you want to know the funny part?
What?
I'm naturally a lefty. So
You're a lefty?
I'm a lefty.
I'm a lefty.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And as we're buying the guitar, I hold the guitar like a lefty guitar, but obviously all their stock guitars, all their floor models and everything are righties. And so I wanted to get like a Fender Strat or something like that.
Amazing you didn't end up like Hendrix and got a right-handed guitar. And
I
just
didn't know
retried
about
it.
that. No, that's how naive I was with guitar at the time. I didn't know about like Hendrix and what he did. I wasn't yet down that path yet. All I knew was Metallica. I was still young. So then when he's trying to sell me the guitar, he goes, "Oh, well, lefty guitars, they're going to be about $300 extra." My dad just looks right at me and goes, "You're learning how to play righty." So I had to like force myself to, and now it's all like
Well,
natural.
you were lucky. But
yeah.
when I joined my first band, I didn't have an instrument yet.
Really?
What happened was in my house, where I had by the time we moved out to Long Island, they didn't have the grand piano anymore. They had an upright console, and we also had an organ, a Baldwin Orgasonic.
Oh, nice.
I remember. And so
I'm sure that was portable.
So how I joined the band was really that there was this other band that knew about me and kind of foisted themselves on me. So next thing I know, we're having rehearsals in my living room. And right after we have 2 rehearsals, they already had a gig lined up.
Nice.
Yeah, so kind of needed an instrument at that point. So I think what happened, my father, you had Sam Ash. We actually had the manager of the Huntington store in Sam Ash lived on my block. So he knew us. So he talked to my dad, and the next thing I know, we went down there, and I got my first keyboard and amplifier, and then I had my equipment for the band. I had a Farfisa Combo Compact in red, disgusting looking color, and a Haynes Bass King amplifier.
Wow. And then what was the wattage on that? Was it
Haynes,
something?
maybe 80 watts.
Oh, geez, that's actually a lot of
212s.
horsepower to it.
Yeah, two 12-inch speakers.
Oh, geez. I had a little 30 watt when I started out. It was like a Roland. It was actually, I think it was something that Larry Coryell was pushing at the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was like a Roland.
The Jazz King or the Jazz Chorus?
The smaller version of that. It was like the entry level version of that, and it would sound great, solo. But then like as soon as you went past like 4 or 5 on the volume knob, just started like crunching up the clean tones. I mean, it's beautiful, but at that time, I didn't need the blues crunch. I need the metal crunch. I didn't know about distortion pedals or anything at the time, so I was like, all right. But in any case, getting into music at the time for me was I'm listening to Z100, and I really didn't know anything at the time of music. I was just listening to, I think there was like a top 5 at night, and I remember there was this tune, Snow's Informer. Do you ever hear that? You got to pull that up. I think a bunch of people are rolling their eyes right now because that was such a freaking 90s tune, like one-hit wonder. But I don't know. At one point in my life, that was like my favorite song. I knew the lyrics to it. And if we pull it up on YouTube or something like that, you're going to, if you think you're laughing at me now, you're going to be cracking up at me later.
I'll probably be cracking up at you later.
Mm-hmm. But in any case, probably my freshman year, one of my friends, Mike, comes out with a cassette. That's right, a cassette, not a CD. Cassette, because we all had Walkmans at the time.
Oh, remember that? Yeah.
Yes. And it was Metallica Live Shit Binge and Purge. It was their live album from Mexico City. He goes, "Here, Ek, listen to this. I'm done listening to it. And I have no idea. What is this? What are you talking about?" I put it in, and it starts out right in the middle of a Kirk Hammett solo, and it's the first time I ever really heard lead guitar, and it's one of those where it's not even in the song. You know how like back in the day they have like, oh, song, and then like guitar solo, song, a drum solo, song, bass solo, or something like that. So it was in the middle of his guitar. I just hear something like, wow, and with the wah pedal and everything. And my eyes just went, what is this? For a week and a half, I played that, that tape, the whole thing over and over. I couldn't believe that sound could come out of an instrument
and now you can do it out of a keyboard.
You can do it out of a keyboard. You can click a button right here on the laptop.
That's true.
And that sound will come out as well as any other tune, and you can auto tune it as well too. But in any case, and then that year, for 16th birthday, whatever, my dad asked, "Oh, what do you want for your birthday?" I said, "Hey, Dad, I want a guitar." And you could just see him in his face. It was just like, oh boy, here, like it's started. So,
did I ever tell you that I owned an electric guitar and amp before I had a keyboard?
No, yeah. I was actually about to ask you, did you have any other instruments prior to?
I bought a $25 electric guitar and Corvettes and a $20 5-watt amplifier with a 6x9-inch speaker in it.
So you could just play for the cat.
Basically myself. No, and always remember, and I think it was $10, right? It was like instead of a pedal, it was you plugged your patch cord into it, and it had the little module, and you had the 1/4-inch jack on the outside. You plug it directly in the amp. What it was just a preamp booster alone with distortion.
Okay.
So I bought that. So I had this 5-amp, and and I'd be trying to do my solos.
Did it work? And you were probably doing that all by ear as well too, right? Or
yeah, by ear, and ear. And I picked up maybe a Mel Bay guitar book for chords.
Yeah. Oh.
Maybe that. So I learned bar chords and
Mel Bay's still
chords.
around.
Yeah,
you know that?
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if he is still around or
he's got to be long since gone. I mean, Mel Bay they had the books out in the
brand.
50s.
I know.
And it looks old on the pictures in the 50s.
But yeah, he's the company itself is still around, and they push all the latest and greatest, obviously like Rosenwinkel and everything like that, as far as like jazz guitar books and everything. I don't think Rosenwinkel himself has a guitar book. I think someone else like just took a bunch of his like best standards or whatever, and then just compile it all.
And what he does, he endorses it so they can put his name on it.
Yeah, there you go. But okay, so there was some type of a little bit of like formal education going.
I did a lot of other. I played bassoon in junior high school.
Oh yes, trumpet here.
Well, first of all, no. I started up. The first instruments, was violin in 4th grade, and then 5th grade. In 5th grade, what they would start our bands, in elementary school. And the band teacher saw me playing around a piano one day and said, "Hey, come on into my room. I want to see something. Yeah. He brought out a set of orchestra bells. Would you be interested in this? Yeah. So then I started playing orchestra bells. Yeah, so I had that. And then from there, I went from junior high school, since I was playing orchestra bells, and I was doing bassoon for the full orchestra. I started doing percussion, and I was playing timpani. Then I was the timpani player for all through school.
Always something with a mallet hitting a tone producing.
Well, not the bassoon. That's a double reed, but otherwise, yes.
The majority. It sounds like a good majority of them. You ever do vibes?
Vibes?
Yeah.
Vibes I only played with. There weren't vibes in our school system.
What's that?
There were no vibes in our school system. The orchestra bell was the closest thing to it. I would have loved the vibes. You kidding? When we would do the state competitions or something like that, and you go on stage and there's vibes, I would always be playing around with the vibes.
Very nice. But now you can do vibes as you said. You can do electric guitar too. Just like hit a certain button on the keyboard.
But it's not the same.
I know. Did you know that due to my ignorance, or maybe not even my ignorance, just like being a kid and just like forgetting things, that I was supposed to play saxophone, but they only allowed like limited people to, if you back in like fifth grade or sixth grade, they have like a certain number that they would allow to like try out for a certain instrument, and I forgot that there were saxophone tryouts that day.
Oh wow!
And then like I come home and my mom's like, "Oh, so where's your saxophone?" I'm like, what are you talking about?" Yelling at me, "Go back there and see." And the music teacher was like, "Nope, we don't have any more all filled up on." It was like the most popular one.
Of course.
Well, we need some trumpet players. There was only like 2 or 3 out, and I was like one of them. So, but yeah, that was I guess my musical experience for the first 13 years of it was kind of like more, do this thing. So. What do you think? What do you think was the difference here? Do you think it's just because when you were growing up, your parents or just people around you were just playing a lot of good music that made you want to play? Versus, I guess in my case, I could only start appreciating that really good music like much later on, after like, oh my God, now I'm actually playing guitar or something now. And then I listened back to my dad's record collection. I'm like, oh my God, he's got like Led Zeppelin 4, every single Beatles album, Steely Dan, Rippingtons, tons of stuff. So what do you think?
What really started me off? Probably my mother, only because of the fact we had the piano there. She played, I started playing, and she liked jazz, so to speak, but not the jazz you would think of as much as today. She was like we would have also classical music, first of all. Mm-hmm. Had classical music, so I fell in love with Rachmaninoff's Second Piano Concerto by the time I was 5 years old. Mm-hmm. I loved it, right? But Andre Previn ended up, I don't know if you know Andre Previn. Andre Previn back in the 50s and maybe early 60s, had a jazz trio, jazz quartet. Andre Previn ended up becoming the conductor of the Los Angeles Philharmonic, was it? Mm. He also ended up marrying Mia Farrow, after Frank had dumped her.
He didn't do too bad for himself.
Yeah, so, and had that, and also, let's see, who else would she have? She had George Shearing, be a lot of George Shearing stuff, so, I was listening to that playing, so I would hear that in the background all the time, and even things like Nat King Cole, you think of the thing, when he would play the piano, Nat King Cole's style is very distinctive. As a matter of fact, a lot of great pianists attribute their early desires to want to play, hearing Nat King Cole play, back when he was in the Nat King Cole trio. Bill Evans always says one of his biggest influences was Nat King Cole.
What was because it's a blur to me since I was an 80s kid. What was the pop music going back in the early to mid 80s then? What was it then?
Wouldn't know, because by that time I was listening to jazz and Zappa.
There you go.
What the music me growing up would probably be the late 60s, early 70s, and that was the classic pop, classic rock,
I get, maybe that's the reason. Maybe my parents really hated the pop music of the 80s, so then I couldn't really get to hear what was, really popular. Or maybe they did play whatever it was at the time, and I was like, this is...
I mean, there was some good 80s pop music, but there was a lot of crap, too, that was all formulaic. I mean, if You know, I tell you, I'm a big reader of tape op. You know, and I've listened to all the stories of all the recording engineers and all the inside people. And I'm reading even in this issue, and he even talked about in this issue how these guys who are great engineers that engineered all these famous albums and famous musicians, how they talk about how by the 1980s, the major labels were not interested in really nurturing the talent. The big thing back in the 60s and 70s were the A&R men, artists and repertoire. They're the ones that were trying to cultivate, trying to find the new interesting sounds to develop an artist. They said, this artist has something, we can develop him, because they figured he developed and make great product and sell a lot of records.
They probably did that with, when I'm watching documentaries about Stevie Wonder, or I'm watching documentaries about Ray Charles and everything. I think here's this kid who's, got this amazing talent. Is that what... Yeah, probably the same type of track that they ran on as well too.
Yeah, and then there's always the story of how Zappa got his start.
What was that?
Zappa, in his band, he was experimental, and they were very counterculture at the time. But they had one kind of pop tune that they did, right? And it happened that because they were out in the L.A. area, that this A&R guy came in with a bunch of people, and he was half drunk at the time, supposedly. And he came in while they were playing that one song, and he immediately on the spot signed them to a 3-record deal.
Not knowing.
And then they put out "We're in it only for the money" and stuff like that. It's like, what the f- is this,
Yes. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That happens, though. I think a good recent example of that was Jason and I told you the story with Juliana and his band with David Bowie, correct?
No.
David Bowie, the late great David Bowie, came out with his last album, Black Star. And I think it was back in 2014 where Juliana, one of the best modern jazz drummers, one of the best drummers, in my opinion, overall of today, his band was playing in Bar 55 in New York City. And obviously, so many great acts just come in there daily on a nightly basis. And his quartet was playing there, his jazz quartet, or maybe another one of his ensembles. And they're playing a set one night in 2014. Someone walks in, sits down, they finish their set. That person gets up and walks away, and people start going, was that David Bowie who came to watch him? And then the story goes, I guess like a short time later, Bowie contacts Mark Juliana, I loved you guys. I want you to play on my new album, which is, you know what I mean? So, but obviously, the cool thing about that is that Juliana's sound can match pretty much anything, as opposed to, as you were saying with Zappa, with just like one like popish tune, and then like all of his other things where they didn't know what they were getting themselves into. Bowie knew exactly what he was getting himself into when he decided to bring Juliana on board. But that's the story, and that's a lesson to you, Warren. Wherever you are, make sure you're doing something and you're doing the best that you can at it, because you never know when someone like a Bowie will walk in and be checking you out.
We're supposed to be this podcast. We're supposed to have reflections towards Warren, right? So can I maybe give you some parenting advice of what not to do?
Well, why wouldn't you? Because isn't that what parenting is? Like, parenting is not only talking about your kid, but it's also telling other parents how to raise their kids as well too.
My brother and I were told from my mother, right, when we were toddlers, right, and we were living in the Bronx, right. My grandfather was part owner of a Democratic club, right. This was in Clawson Point, the Bronx, and she would have to go shopping. My father's at work, My sister was in high school at the time, right? So she would ask my grandfather to watch, and said, sure, bring him to the Democratic Club, right? And supposedly the way that he would watch us was he would each give us a little glass of beer. And we're talking like maybe I'm like 1.5. My brother's like 3.5, right?
This explains so much, by the way. Keep going.
And then let us each take a puff of his cigar, right? Because he was a cigar smoker. And we get dizzy and fall out.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I get dizzy and almost... I remember just a few years ago, I accidentally inhaled a cigar and it hit my head on the table from how strong one hit was. And I'm 30. And how old were you when you puffed a cigar?
I was a baby, a toddler.
How are you not how did you not like spontaneously combust?
Well, no, don't you realize that's why I'm the person I am today?
And that's why I said this explains so much.
Beautifully broken, you know.
Okay, so anyway, go on.
No, well, so the story is don't do that with Warren.
Having Warren smoking a cigar.
No, and the point I want to make is really don't let him drink beer at that age. Wine. Wine is much more conducive.
I think he'll be safe from that. I'm trying to think of the first time I ever had a drink. No, I can't remember. What I do remember though was that I think my dad, just for like the sake of it, when I was growing up, maybe like, you know, elementary school, Dad, let me try it. Of course he gave me like a sip and I was like, it tastes horrible. And then I remember going to some other family function and they had mineral water or something. But I was expecting it to be like Sprite or something sweet, you know? So I took a sip of it and I did a spit take. Your classic like, and everyone was like, what's wrong? What's wrong? I'm like, you gave me beer. Because that's what it reminded me of, you know? So, geez. But in any case, in case people don't know, Roy is also he's successful in the fact that he has raised a son as well too, and he has also flown the coop. Mark, who I also know personally as well, a wonderful guy, and he's out, he's married, getting his new house, so that's a couple of notches under your belt, and also, you know, if there was like a ranking thing, what is it? The stripes on your shoulder or something? You'd probably be like a 3-star general.
I'm lucky he turned out as he turned out.
Yeah. And when I first met Mark, the cool part that I found about it was that not only was he like sitting there studying for his for law school and everything, but also at the same time he was bobbing his head. He was giving you feedback on your keyboard. So he was giving he was like, oh, that's like some cool stuff. Oh, what's that? Well, on your guitar. He had his own guitar rig.
And you were giving him pointers on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
And that's the other thing. I recall within like a month or two, he's like, hey, can you... And so after a rehearsal, I'm like trying to smash through his half guard as he's like, you know, defending like no-gi and everything. And I came home that night and my wife's like, why are you sweating so much? and I said, I ended up, you know, rolling Mark. He goes, what are you... I thought you were rehearsing. And then it's a bit of a story. But yeah, Mark is also... very into martial arts as well too, into jiu-jitsu, and yeah, that's another. I guess that's a compliment to you, Roy, as far as going through the whole path, and whatever as far as backseat parenting that you want to throw for Warren. As you see,
well,
how did you
don't stifle whatever directions they're going to go into, unless it's really they're looking to become I don't know, a criminal or something like that. You don't stifle their ambition.
Wait. We're not supposed to like encourage it. I mean, Dexter, when I watch it, tells me otherwise.
I never really watched only the first episode of Dexter, so I can't follow along with that.
You know, you got to control your anger there, Dexter. Here, you got to focus it. Oh, he's a serial killer, but he only kills the bad guys. You know, get out of here. You know.
No, but really don't stifle them. I mean, he wanted to get into martial. Well, actually, we kind of introduced him to the martial arts. And
At what age?
He was 6, I think.
Yes, that was, go on. No, go on.
And we were just very fortunate. Who knew it? Because you know how small our town is. You know,
yes,
it's a small town. And so the dojo that we brought him to, the local dojo, which was Alan and Anita Santucci.
Wait. You immediately agreed to let him try martial arts when he first requested? Go on.
Absolutely. We brought him, but who knew that this little dojo, which I should have realized when I saw that it occupied like 4 of the upstairs, the storefronts, the upstairs floor, so it was really large. They were like super highly, decorated, or what do you call them? They're well known in the karate world. I mean, she was the first Olympic referee or judge in karate. He's a 12th degree black belt, but they, I think, maybe helped form him even more so than I did, because they were very much forming character building.
So he started with karate.
Yeah.
How? So he started at 6, and how long was he in karate for?
Oh, a number of years. He had his brown belt, and they did not give out belts very easily. Also, they made sure that
That's
you
true.
develop, and he went to a lot of competitions. And
And he did compete too.
oh
That's
yeah,
awesome.
oh yeah. We traveled around the U.S.
Really?
Yeah,
I didn't know this about Mark.
Yeah. Someday he'll tell you about how he was next to death's door. He had some terrible virus. He was throwing up the entire way on our way to Canton, Ohio, and we ended up in the hospital like maybe 40 miles before that because he was so bad we didn't know, and they just said he's just sick and just had to give him a bunch of fluids. And we told him you don't have to compete. You can just go and watch if you want. Long story short, he ended up getting a bronze.
Very nice.
in his class, but don't stifle him. Mark wanted to start playing music, right? And so, as a matter of fact, I got him a guitar. But even before I got him a guitar, my nephew, right, had this cheap electric guitar. He wanted to get him. He had bought himself a Telly. He's my drummer. My nephew, who's the drummer, by the way.
Yes.
So he just said, "Mark, you take this, right?" And so Mark had that.
He was
and then-
gifted at Telly.
Yeah. Oh, he was much more gifted than that. I told you about my buddy who has the program music and was doing basically 12% of the national market at one point.
Okay.
He gave him the '57 Mustang I showed you that one time.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, that.
Wow.
He said, yeah, there's something going.
Awesome. I wish I was gifted it. Well, to be fair, it took a lot of years. It took a lot of whining and pouting. But then recently, I was gifted the ES335 from my dad. So.
That's a great guitar.
Oh, yeah.
I love the sound of 335s.
The reason why you saw my eyebrows raise when you said when Mark wanted to go into martial arts and you were like, oh yeah, sure, we'll try it out. I think what was it back in the 80s? Everyone watched Karate Kid and everyone wanted to be thought they were a black belt or they knew karate from that. And so when I saw that, I was freaking out. I think it was along with Karate Kid, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, whatever else was out at the time. I just knew I wanted to do something.
You didn't see the Bruce Lee movies by that time?
I probably did, but it was, you know how like in those movies, whether it be Ninja Turtles or Karate Kid, they just kind of got to the action right away.
Yeah, right.
Bruce Lee movies are movies. They develop. He's got like this whole character and everything, and then you eventually get to the fight scenes that I couldn't wait for. In fact, I think like Enter the Dragon had like a pretty kind of like a lot of racy scenes.
Wait, what about Mortal Kombat?
What's that?
Mortal Kombat.
Mortal Kombat came way after.
Oh, okay.
Way after. I think that was already 90s.
Come over here.
But with Karate Kid or Ninja Turtles, obviously you got to see hiya, and it was like, look, there's 10 foot soldiers around you, and then like you hit them in the face, you hit them in the stomach, and they all get knocked out, and they're unconscious or something just from one little tip, and sometimes like a triple kick or something like that. Bruce Lee was, I'm flipping you over, I'm armbarring you, I'm choking you out, and everything, which I found out a lot later. Long story short, I couldn't watch them because my dad wouldn't let me watch those movies. There was one scene where I think like some guy rapes and kills his sister or something like that. Yeah, Bolo.
Whoa.
In the original Enter the Dragon, Bolo like does something to his sister or some relative, and that's why he wants to like come back. And that famous scene where he like jumps and does that double stomp, and it's like. And like has that face and he like kills him, and then obviously everyone turns around, like shows their back to him, like, oh, you're not supposed to kill him or something. I forgot, but in any case, I wanted to do karate. I asked my dad I want to do karate, and my dad's like, no,
Really?
yes. And every couple of years, like, hey, can I take some type of martial arts? Nope. And you know what's the repeated line he always said to me was, Eck, your only job is to go to school to learn. And he did that. And he stuck to that message.
But you know what? It was so character building. I think it helped focus Mark much more. Before that, also Mark was, there was a lot of kids bigger than him at the time, right? So, of course, you're going to have the bully syndrome, right? So, of course, you got that that going on. It so centered him, and he was so relaxed. I mean, he didn't act out. The only time he actually did in middle school, he had this really bully that came that, there was a problem kid that came in. I think I told you a story. His father was a policeman from somewhere in Bergen County.
I didn't hear that story.
No. Well, the father was a policeman and moved his family over, right? Long story short, the father was arrested and prosecuted for...
Jesus.
Yeah, for, shall we say, for sexual conduct with minors.
Okay.
Right? So the kid had a problem. He came from a problem.
Yeah.
And he started picking on Mark, and Mark just turned around. Apparently, this was during lunchtime out in the field, playground.
Yep.
And supposedly, as I was told from his friends and even the teachers afterwards, because Cheryl was on the board of ed, so you knew the teachers, is apparently Mark just in 3 moves, from karate, just had him down and just was holding him in place. And then when the teachers came over and saw who it was, they said, "Okay, Mark, you go on, play with the kids," and the other kid got expelled.
I only got in one fight in grade school. I think it was like in 5th grade, and it was out here, right in Nutley, and there's a big like little football field. Everyone was playing touch football, but this one kid was being really rough and like almost tackling people. In touch football, just 2 hands. That's it. Just tag them. And then like he did it like 3 times. He did it to one of my friends, so that I shoved him. And then it just basically got into your basic elementary school like shoving match. There wasn't any real strikes thrown or anything like that.
Oh no,
but no.
Oh,
and
I got picked as I was a kid.
Yeah.
As a kid, I got picked on a lot.
Yeah.
I was a nerdish type probably.
No, really,
really, and I got picked on, and so I got picked, and you shrug it off. And I think I can only remember 2 fights that I actually ended up fighting back. And one with this little kid that said something about my mother. For some reason, that ticked me off, and I started. I turned around back, and I started just lashing at him. So that got broken up.
Back in the day, saying something about your mother was what is that? Them fighting words.
Yeah, right. So that came to. I never had anything with him after that. But one of his friends one time, right? I remember I lived on a corner property, and I was working out, doing the lawn, for my family on the side, and this one guy came over and this friend of his who was bigger too, and started picking on me, right? And I was get away, and he did the wrong thing. He happened to slap me and knock my glasses off, and I just saw red.
Yeah.
And it ended up my father ended up pulling me off on top. He had me in the scissors lock, but I was on top of him, and I was just wailing his face. So then after that, what happened after that? That's when the summer of '69 basically happened, and people started getting into music, and I was allowed to play in high school the organ in the auditorium. That was sacrosanct, but I was allowed to play. So my lunch hours, I would just go over there and play rock tunes. So then I was cool for some reason. Also because I was growing my hair long.
And also because music at that time was like if you could play, you were seen as godly.
Funny thing is, all the guys that were all the hoodlum greasers and stuff like that were getting in bands. Would all call me up and want to join the band.
Yeah,
after that,
that was the new hotness. So, the correlation to my little schoolyard fight was also I relate to Mark in that like afterwards after they pulled us apart, the principal took a look at it. The 2 of us knew me as the nerd or whatever that just never got in trouble. The other kid obviously was the troublemaker. It's like, he just asked me, all right, what happened? All right. Okay. All right, go ahead. Go back to class. I'm like, oh, all right. Okay.
Right.
So, but the other big thing was, as you were mentioning too, that yes, of it centering Mark because he was able to do martial arts from such an early age, apparently starting at 6. Is that what it was? I didn't start...
Maybe 7.
Yeah, I didn't start doing... Here's what happened. After I graduated college, I was, floundering around a little bit. My dad was asking, oh, so what do you want to do now? I forgot which job I was working, but also I do recall saying, I think I want to learn how to fight. And so he kind of just like sighed. He smiled. He, looked up and he did realize his words that my job at school was done because I was done with school now. So my guitar teacher at the time was also into mixed martial arts. So I asked him, oh, should I go to like this karate school? I saw this other school. He goes, no. You don't need any of that today. This was in 2004, 2005 or something like that. I forgot. And he goes, here, try this school out. And it was a mixed martial arts school in Nutley. So he saved me a bunch of, because there were a lot of...
You're lucky because that's when it really just started really becoming popular around then.
the other big thing too was the fact that Mark was lucky too, that he got into, because you hear horror stories of traditional martial arts where they have schools where they give black belts to kids when they're only, like 6 years old or 7 years old or something like that. And not real actual sparring or anything like that. And some of the instructors, they claim to be and this was before the age of the internet. They claim to be black belts, nowhere close. Yeah. So when I went to the mixed martial arts school, I remember my first lesson. It was like an ankle lock. It was like a double leg takedown and rear naked choke. No, guillotine. A guillotine choke. Those three things. And I was like, what? Like, what? I thought I would be like, throwing spin kicks or, And then I was like, I don't know. I'm not sure if I want to do all this. And then the instructor was like, here, rent these videos at Blockbuster just to show you how long ago this was.
Was Ong back?
No. He told me to rent the first 3 UFCs.
Oh, really?
Yes. So I'd never seen them before. I heard about them, but I never seen them before. I only knew about UFC because I was watching professional wrestling, WWF at the time, and Ken Shamrock was done with UFC, and he was actually like Intercontinental Champion in WWF, World Wrestling Federation at the time, before it became WWE. So then I'm watching UFC, and I'm watching Hoist Gracie just choke out giants. And I'm like, what is going on? It just... Because you got to remember, I got raised on Karate Kid. I got raised on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I got raised on Bruce Lee. Even though Bruce Lee did show that he had like mixed martial arts and ground fighting and everything, a lot of his stuff was still his striking and like, one punch knockout or like his 1-inch punch and everything like that. So yeah, that's how I started. And what you also said also resonated with me, where you said that Mark was just so much more centered and balanced at that point. I was so... after I got out of college... Oh, hi, Hobbs.
Hi, Hobbs. How you doing, boy?
Hobbs is our other son. Our half lab, half pit son. Now he wants some affection. After, getting out of college, just still really confused, just still really, even though I had my degree and everything, I still want to do this, I don't want to do that. There was always something like, I guess, searching in me, or I just didn't, definitely the confidence. There was definitely self-confidence issues and everything, and I just couldn't figure it out. But then upon starting to fight, and then upon starting to just like train that way, you could easily, I joke with Jess, that you wouldn't have wanted to have met me back in. I don't think any of my friends, a lot of them, I don't think I would want them, like my good friends now, I don't think I would have wanted them to have interacted with me taking martial arts and everything. Just a totally different person. Yeah. Just as far as just like how the mannerism, just losing my cool or anything like that. So, at the same time though, it's something to be said where I actually know life before martial arts versus like now. You know what I mean? So I have like a comparison point. So it's kind of like you ask yourself like, can you really appreciate it? You know what I mean? So it's the same thing with Jess. Jess has been training since she was also, 5 or 6. So she doesn't have her first like memory. I made a joke about this. Like if you do like what is Windows version of like backup? I know Apple does Time Machine or something, right? Isn't there something like a restore points?
They just restore Windows Restore
points. If you go back to the earliest like Time Machine or Windows Restore point for Jess, there's martial arts in there.
Oh, really? Huh?
If you go back far enough with me, yeah, you get Eki without any martial arts. So it's kind of like I can appreciate it, but at the same time, does that really count? As far as just like, I can appreciate life before that, and I have like my comparison point, or do I want to be the type, or do I wish I was the type of person that was like, it was from the very start ingrained in me? So obviously, starting out with Warren, I'm sure you've probably already seen pictures of him. We take him to jiu-jitsu.
Love his gi.
He's got his own little gi on. He's already got a good grip, pulling people by the collars and everything. So. That's really cool, though, that Mark was encouraged to do a bunch of things from the very get-go. And do you ever find yourself... Actually, no. I can answer that question already. You never really found yourself like needing to... As we know, some parents and everything, you hear about them, like the overbearing ones want to live vicariously through them. And
Oh no,
No?
I was just the exact opposite. I was a late child in my family, the youngest of three. I think my parents were burnt out by that time. So I basically kind of, for a lot part, grew up on my own. You know, my sister moved out of the house shortly after we moved out to Long Island. So, let's see. I think I was 10 years old when she got married. All right, so I grew up basically. My brother, was 2.5 years older than me. But I learned for the most part just by myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
There's a lot of self-taughtness going for you.
yeah,
Right.
as far as music though, I should tell you, I went the route that. Obviously, I told you about limited I had with my piano instruction, maybe 3.5 years in totally. But then I did school instruction, and so I started in 10th grade. We started music theory.
Yes.
So music theory, when I was doing choir, orchestra, band, and music theory. And even though they didn't, they called it like a music performing option. They allowed me to take all the courses where not many of the other students they would allow to take all the courses. So I did that, and I had my background from that too, my music training.
Very nice.
Then I went to college, right? As music, obviously. But after my first year, I got an offer to go on the road. So the rest is history.
So when you do go on the road, it's kind of like, do you think you at that point had a good enough base in music where, as opposed to having no base in music and attempting to self-teach yourself, having a bit of a base and then knowing what to teach yourself, as well as pulling in experiences or advice from other mentors?
Well, the most important part of that whole music experience was probably the theory.
Yeah?
Because if you know theory, then you can basically direct yourself on how to learn. At that point, you know what direction you have to improve just upon yourself.
Yeah.
And you can seek those avenues. But the whole basis of music, once you know music theory and understand music theory for composition purposes, for performance purposes, it's really, theory is the basics of music. That's what you're learning.
What do you say to those people who say they want to just self-teach themselves and they don't want to have outside influences, they want to be as original as they want to be? So if they start taking formal instruction or anything like that, they may not be them.
If you want to learn your own, first, if you have the latent ability to be a musician, so that's not a problem. I do think that maybe early on, getting some fundamental instruction, it can only even be 6 months for that matter, very short, might be a good thing. But at that point, I definitely feel that if you want to learn you want to develop your craft on your own, and you want to have your own, don't want to be influenced by anyone else. I mean, I did a period, I'd listen to a lot of people, and then I purposely would not listen to anything. And I would just play because I wanted to get those influences out and try to nurture myself.
Yep.
But, you don't do that forever. That's something you do for a period of time and you help nurture, because it's like stepping on a ladder. Each time you step on here, you get to this point, then you have to change your modus, and you're going to have to find some other thing to help you, and you step on that. And as you're going up, everything culminates together to your art form and how you play and who you are.
Do you think there was anything as you were learning where, obviously in theory, when a lot of people hear about learning music theory and they think of it more like math, they think of it like a lot of rules to learn and everything?
Not rules, possibilities. Because it is, at the beginning, it's rules. It's possibilities. I think the biggest thing you learn is Bach-figured bass. You learn about, from your guitarist or keyboard, anyone that does chords and melody together, you realize, if you are starting on your own, you think, oh, this is a C chord. You only think of it in that position. Once you start about thinking of Bach-figured bass and say, hey, this could be in a first position instead, and it sounds totally different. Where the third is the beginning of your chord, as opposed to playing your typical triad, first, third, and fifth, or second position, and then you learn about alterations of chords, as you know, I like to interesting,
Yes.
I like harmonic
Crunchy.
possibilities.
Crunchy. I think that's the term everyone uses. Crunchy chords.
I don't know why crunchy.
I don't know why either, but I remember hearing some guy like after he like learned something like dominant 7 / chord sharp 11, and he's like, oh yeah, it's crunchy as fuck, and I was like, all right, I guess that's the term. All right.
I like it because it adds flavor.
Yes, absolutely. But also at that point, I think what you're also saying is that, yeah, there are rules, but probably for anyone starting out, you need those rules to kind of figure out the possibilities. And once you get outside those rules, as you said, there are more possibilities from that. So in other words, you need those initial rules to kind of just like steer you in the right way, because or else you just sound like a keyboard cat.
And
right?
then just exploring from that point on.
Mm-hmm. So you think, probably with that, I've always kind of operated by that, especially after after martial arts, and with music. There's a lot of improvisation in both of them, and then you can apply that to a lot of things that you go through with just the way you operate in life as well too.
Absolutely.
So kind of like, all right, here are the rules. Now figure out how much you can bend them without actually breaking them.
Isn't that the mantra for life, period?
It is. What was Charlie Parker's thing?
Learn everything you can when you get up on stage. Just blow.
Just throw the book out and just play.
Just blow. Because by that point, it's inherent.
And for everyone listening, that's basically the approach Roy and I took doing this initial podcast here, where we just had a bit of an outline of like kind of what we wanted to talk about.
Did we follow it at all?
A little bit, just every once in a while, referencing Warren and everything like that. But at the same time, it was just going with it, and I enjoyed it a lot. It was fun.
So did I.
It was fun, and this was about an hour already, and I know you got to go.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it, Roy, and hopefully, you had fun with it as well too.
Absolutely.
Maybe we'll do some.
We'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, we'll do it again sometime. Thank you so much.
See ya.